Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the ROS Media channel. I'm here again with my good friend Ian Clifford. If you've ever looked at a mortgage, your bank statements, your credit card bills, and maybe felt that something's a little bit off, that something's fundamentally broken when it comes to the way that money works, then you're not wrong. Most of us feel like players, or have felt like players on a trapped financial treadmill that we didn't even design. But let me ask you this: what if the rules of the entire economy were quietly rewritten nearly a century ago? What if the financial system isn't actually lending you money, but instead it's running entirely on your life, your energy, and your promises to pay? Well, if that were the case, then this coming Saturday, June 13th, 10 a.m. UK time, we're going to pull back the curtain on what's called signature credit tax redirection. This is a real breakthrough that Ian has put an architecture around that's actually been put forward as a candidate for the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences by our members. So joining us right now for a quick 20-minute chat into the mechanics of this before the main event is the designer and the presenter of these protocols. Ian, great to have you back with us.
Well, it's, I've enjoyed building this because it plays to my strengths, and I think it will have a profound positive effect on so many people. So it's what I've always wanted to do, is to solve complex problems and help people to to have a better life, and it ticks both of those boxes. So I'm very happy to continue to explain it, which obviously we're doing a fair amount on our webinars, and gradually people are beginning to comprehend it, I think. So it's quite rewarding.
Excellent. Well, let's start with the basics. I think for people who are maybe brand new to this, let's talk about this game that we are all playing. For a regular person wondering why their bills keep going up, why they can't seem to get ahead on their credit card or their mortgage payments, can you explain what the agency trap is and how the registration of just a standard birth certificate subtly tricks living human beings into becoming this lifelong guarantor for what is essentially a corporate fiction's debts?
Well, it's a very clever deception. There's the living soul, the living man or woman that starts off its life as a baby. The baby's mum and dad register this corporate citizen, which is the ens legis, or the birth certificate construct. It's a decedent's estate, and it's based on the registration of the placenta, which obviously dies not long after the birth of the baby. So you've got this construct where it's registered to the state, becomes their construct, it's their property, but it's linked to the baby through DNA, and then it's further linked through agency, because the living baby that grows up to become an adult then starts to operate as if it were the birth certificate construct, and actually it's occupying the office of the executor de son tort, which means the executor of all of the wrongs. So it's holding itself out. The living soul, man, woman, is holding out as if they were the birth certificate construct, and of course they're not. It's like saying, I'm a company. You're not the company. You might be the shareholder, you might be the director, you might be an employee, but you're not the company. So that's what's going on. It's an agency. It's a blessing and a curse, because with the agency, you can actually you can use that positively for the redirection of taxes, which we'll get onto in the probably later on in this brief chat, and certainly on the webinar. But it's also a curse, because the living man, woman becomes responsible for everything that the birth certificate construct does on this artificial monopoly board, which is actually a worldwide bankrupt trust, which I talk about in my research papers.
Okay, so you also talk in your research papers, you point to data from the Bank of England itself, and that it's proven to show that banks create credit ex nihilo, it's called, which is literally out of nothing, the exact second that we sign our name. So if our biological signature is the actual primary source that's generating 100% of the loan's value, whether it be a mortgage or a credit card or whatever it may be, why have we been trained to just act like these, subordinate debtors? And if that's the case, how do banks then treat our personal credit energy? Because you talk about abandoned property as well, don't you?
Yeah, there's a assumption or a presumption that the banks have got money to lend. When you get a loan or a mortgage or a credit card, it looks like they are lending you their money. It appears to be like that, and of course nobody really challenges it. And even if you do challenge it, what can you do? If you don't understand how the whole framework works, there's not a great deal you can do anyway, because it's the only source of lending. I mean, there are some private loans and there's some peer-to-peer type lending, but the majority of the people don't qualify for those. So they're looking for regular credit cards, loans, and mortgages. And of course, that's where the banks step in. They're actually operating as nominees for the living soul. As I talk about in my research papers and on my webinars, it's just a deception. The banks don't have money to lend. When you sign up for a loan, a credit card, or a mortgage, what you're actually doing is depositing human energy onto this monopoly board, which is a worldwide bankrupt trust. And it's that human energy which is going to underwrite the whole monetary system. That is world debt, or it's a component of world debt. The whole thing is the whole monopoly board works on debt, and it all comes from the people. It's really an extraction of their energy that's transferred onto this monopoly board, onto this worldwide trust. And that's what the banks are using. They're using that energy as if it was theirs, but it isn't theirs. They're the nominees for it. They're trustees of the energy, but they use it and presume that it's theirs, and they use it all the time. And that's where their Achilles heel is, because it's not actually theirs. And I show and I talk about that in my research papers, what their Achilles heel is, and how you can redirect taxes, which they pay for the use of it, which is really the smoking gun of the entire banking marketplace, is that they are using human energy, paying taxes to use it. Those taxes actually belong to the living soul, but how you get it to how you redirect it to the living soul is, all in contained in my webinars and in my research papers.
Okay, so when you say there's this smoking gun that they're paying taxes, and we've spoken about this many times, haven't we? If they're paying taxes on something, that clearly is them admitting that they don't have ownership over it. Otherwise, why would they be paying taxes in the first place? And you talk about this Form 945. Don't want to get into too much detail about this, but I think if people are going to understand that the banks are paying taxes for using our credit energy, where are those taxes going? You talk about the 945, and then you also mentioned there that it can be redirected back to the living person. But how is that done? Because there's also this 810 algorithmic freeze that you speak about, where there's been many people that have tried to do this in some way, shape, or form, but have been doing it completely wrong, getting themselves in trouble. You've clearly figured it out. And there is a method and there is a strategy that is totally lawful, totally legal, using the system as it was built and as it was intended to be able to redirect those. So could you just talk very briefly, Ian, about what is the 945 tax module and what is this algorithm 810 freeze that you speak about as well?
Well, there's only two entities that are involved in this game of Monopoly. There's creditors and debtors. And the creditors were the original bloodline banking families that bailed out the United States as a corporation in 1933, and then that sets up the whole system as a bankrupt trust, and you've then got debtors that are paying taxes to use the assets that actually are pledged to the bankruptcy trustee, or via the bankruptcy trustee, which is the United States Treasury. So the banks are actually debtors to the original creditors, and they pay tax to use the energy, which is collateral that's underpinning the bankruptcy. So the 945 tax module, banks pay taxes because they are debtors by definition. They are using collateral, which is human energy, that actually has been pledged to underwrite the bankruptcy of the whole monopoly board system. So that's why they pay taxes, because they're using the energy as a debtor, and the debtors have to pay tax. Tax is like a rent for the use of collateral or property or assets. So the banks are using our energy. The energy doesn't belong to them. They pay taxes for using it. That makes them a debtor entity. The tax module they pay these taxes on is called the 945 tax module. It's the only tax module that's available to them to pay taxes on something called 1099 OID, backup withholding. That is the human energy. They disguise it. I've written about this in my papers, that how they disguise it so that they try and hide the fact that they are paying taxes for the use of human energy. But the evidence is there. It's all in the filing. It's all forensically available. If you've got the right tools and you've not got the right knowledge, you can find the proof that they are actually paying taxes on this 945 ledger or module, which proves that the banks are debtors, not creditors.
Okay, so when it comes to redirecting those taxes back to source, there's a right way and a wrong way of doing this. Could you briefly explain this algorithmic freeze that many people have fallen foul of?
Well, a lot of people don't know how the game is wired up, and they don't realize that if they file to redirect taxes as a debtor themselves, that they're not entitled to the redirection of taxes, because the taxes belong to creditors, not debtors. So when people are filing, to redirect the taxes, but they are filing from the standing of a debtor, then that gets them into all kinds of trouble. Either that tax redirection will be blocked by the IRS's algorithm, or if it gets through the net, then they're probably going to have some serious consequences after they've received the tax redirection, because it doesn't belong to them. The tax redirection only belongs to creditors, never to debtors, and that's where a lot of people have gone wrong. Their research was incomplete. They were going down the right pathway, but they just didn't know. They didn't realize that the trap is more sophisticated than it appears. You've got to set the game up in the right way. You've got to operate as a nominee and a creditor in order to redirect taxes. Most people don't realize how that works, the significance of it, and a lot of people have got into trouble by not realizing that and operating as a creditor. They're operating as a debtor that isn't entitled to tax redirection.
Okay, now I know that on Saturday we're going to go into a lot more detail about this on the webinar. In particular, how far back you can go to reclaim or redirect these taxes that have already been paid. So these are taxes that have already been paid throughout that lifetime, and you can go back. You talk about reclaiming everything since the age of 18. So allowing somebody to look back that far historically, I mean, is it true that the average person could potentially recoup the face value of not just the mortgage they've got right now, but every mortgage they've ever had, every personal loan they've ever had, every credit card they've ever had, every payment that's left their bank account that they've signed for? I mean, you talk about establishing something called an infinity loop. So could you just briefly outline for people that want to come on Saturday, what's the scope here? What's the extent of what they can actually achieve with this?
Well, if you go back to 18, that's when the birth certificate construct starts operating and starts playing as a player piece in this worldwide trust, this monopoly game that as I refer to it. And every time it gets involved in a banking transaction, whether it's making a bank payment, whether it's signing up for a loan, a credit card, or a mortgage, what it's actually doing is creating a promise to pay. It's creating a negotiable instrument. And that negotiable instrument, or all of those negotiable instruments, if you add them all together, all the bank payments, whether it's business, personal, all loans, credit cards, mortgages, add them all together from the age of 18, and it probably comes up to multiples of millions. So what you can do is you can employ our system to find it, to link the original signatures which has created these negotiable instruments, and to banks, to the taxes that the banks are paying for the use of that human energy. And then you can recoup or redirect taxes up to $2 million a year without invoking any manual reviews. And you can recoup every year going forward. So you can actually recoup all the historical signature credit, the energy that you put onto this monopoly board, with a cap of $2 million per year. But that's every year going forward. So if you spend it and recoup it, or keep on recouping, abandoned signature credit energy from the past, and if you've got 50 more years to play the game of Monopoly going forward, you're talking about $100 million of potential signature credit tax redirection. So it's completely life-changing. It's like winning the lottery, but instead of getting it all in one go, you can get up to $2 million a year going forward.
I don't know how anybody wouldn't manage on $2 million a year. That's an insane amount of money. I know we've spoken about this on many occasions. I'm sure people would want to buy certain things, maybe get themselves a forever home for the family, maybe get themselves a decent car if they haven't got a decent car, maybe take the family on holiday. But there's only so much you can do, isn't there? There's only so much you can buy, and then you're just down to your basic necessities and needs for the month and for the year. So $2 million a year is life-changing, I feel, for anybody in any situation, really. So let's talk a little bit about how people can actually get on this webinar, because we are limited in terms of how many people can register for our weekly webinars. We do a flagship webinar every Saturday morning, 10 a.m. UK time. It's limited to 1,000 seats, guys, and we always see over registration week on week on week. So you need to secure your seat. You need to go to this particular link here, which is roswebinars.is. If you're brand new to us here at the Republic of Old Souls, go to this address. You can register for the weekly webinar. If you're already a member here at the Republic of Old Souls, maybe you are a member and you're just educating yourself. Maybe you're already going through the Monopoly Game Changer protocol or others that we have here, and you're already in signature credit tax redirection. If you are, fantastic. But if you're not, and you're still on that fence thinking, do I or don't I do something about this, then you really need to be getting yourselves educated by coming on the webinars, looking at the material that Ian and I put together, and then also share it with your friends and family, guys. Don't let them sit on the sidelines. This financial system has been using your energy to fund their game for decades. And on Saturday, Ian's going to give you the step-by-step manual to turn the tables on that. So I would encourage you all to register for the webinar. We will see you there, 10 a.m. sharp UK time. And if there's anybody else within your circle, within your family, within your friends that you feel would benefit from this information, then you can also pass this link out to them. If you're a member here, you'll have your own unique link that you can pass out to friends, family, and other acquaintances so that they can benefit from what I consider to be life-changing information. So that's all I've got to say, Ian, about this coming Saturday. Any final thoughts from yourself before we let everyone go?
Well, I believe that everybody should know this, whether you actually take action with it or not, it's up to you. But to have a comprehension about how the monetary system works, I think is important. You know, I don't think that I don't think you'd be bored by coming. We get some very good feedback, and it's life changing. So, and the best part about it, I think, is that you don't have to learn it all and execute it all yourself. We facilitate everything for you. So you just need to be aware of what's happening and how it's being put together. But you don't actually have to do it all yourself. You know, we've taken that big step, which is what a lot of people are trying to do, is figure out how to do this themselves, getting it wrong, and getting themselves into trouble. So you don't have that problem. We've proven it works. We've had success. And if you are interested in knowing why we've had success, it's all in my research papers on Ecclesia Law Institute.
Perfect. So if you want to go to Ecclesia Law and see those, you can do. It's ecclesialaw.is is where all of Ian's technical papers are. If you're not into technical papers and you would rather come to the webinar on Saturday and listen there, then we will look forward to seeing you 10 a.m. sharp UK time. For now, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.